I remember the night like it was yesterday. I was sleeping in my car, my back pressed against the worn leather of the driver's seat, parked right outside the house I had built with my own 2 hands. Rain streaked the windshield, the October chill seeping through the cracks, and my thoughts swirled around what had been and what had been stolen from me. That's when I saw it. An envelope, yellowed at the edges, resting against my windshield wiper like it had been waiting for me all these years. No postmark. No return address. Just a train ticket to a station I'd never even heard of, and 5 words that made my blood run cold. He waited for you. My name is Frank Meadows. I'm 47 years old, and 3 months ago I lost everything. Everything that mattered. The life I thought I had vanished, stolen by the 2 people I had trusted most. For 12 weeks I'd been hiding in plain sight, sleeping in that car, watching from across the street as Boyd Hutchkins, the man who would become the embodiment of my worst nightmares, lived in my home, slept in my bed, and tucked my children in at night. But that envelope changed everything. You see, to understand how a small-town veterinarian ended up homeless, broken, and desperate enough to chase a mysterious train ticket into the unknown, you need to know how it all began. You need to know about Gretchen, my wife, my partner for 16 years. She was beautiful in the way that makes people stop mid-step and stare. A quiet, understated beauty. Auburn hair she'd twist up with a pencil while doing paperwork at the clinic. Green eyes that crinkled when she laughed at my terrible jokes. The first time I met her, she brought an injured stray cat to my clinic, and she stayed for 3 hours to make sure it survived surgery. Most people would have just dropped it off, I told her. She looked me squarely in the eye and said, "I'm not most people, Dr. Meadows." And right then, I was done for. Boyd Hutchkins didn't come into our lives with a warning. He didn't announce himself. He entered silently, like carbon monoxide, unseen, odorless, and deadly. Gretchen introduced him as our new handyman one spring morning. 6'4" of muscle, tattoos snaking up his arms, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Frank, honey, this is Boyd," she said, her hand lingering on his forearm just a second too long. "He's going to fix that leak in the basement you've been too busy to handle." Even then, my son Colby knew something was off. He stepped behind me instinctively as if his 6-year-old body already sensed danger. My daughter Josie, usually a whirlwind of chatter, fell silent. And Duke, our golden retriever who adored everyone, growled low in his throat. "Friendly dog," Boyd said, but his tone suggested Duke better learn to be friendly. Fast, the truth. I'd been losing Gretchen for years, and I refused to see it. 70-hour work weeks at the clinic, emergency calls in the dead of night, missing school plays, missed soccer games. I told myself I was building a life for my family, but Gretchen saw through it. "Your patients get the best of you," she said one night, standing in our bedroom doorway. "We get whatever's left. I promised I'd do better. Hired another vet. Planned the vacation we'd been dreaming about since Josie was born. But promises are just words when actions don't follow." 3 months before the envelope appeared, I came home from a veterinary conference in Chicago to find Boyd's truck in my driveway at 11 p.m. "He's fixing the garbage disposal," Gretchen explained, avoiding my eyes. The disposal that worked perfectly fine just 10 minutes before I left. That should have been the first warning. The second came when I found Boyd's cigarettes in my nightstand drawer. The third, when Gretchen suddenly had book club meetings 4 nights a week. I was Frank Meadows, respected veterinarian, Rotary Club member, Little League coach for 5 straight years. Men like me didn't have wives who cheated. Men like me didn't get replaced by unemployed bouncers who could bench press more than I could deadlift. And yet, there I was, buried deeper in work, pretending none of it mattered. My father disappeared when I was 15. Left for work one morning and never came home. Police found his car at the bus station. His wallet. Everything else gone. The only clue, a note on the kitchen table. "I'm sorry. This is the only way to keep you safe." My mother never recovered. She died 5 years later, officially from heart disease. I knew better. She died from abandonment. From heartbreak. I swore I would never let that happen to my own family. that I would fight for them, and life laughed at me for thinking I had control. The morning everything exploded started like any other. I'd been throwing up since 4 a.m. from bad seafood at a medical sales dinner the night before. My assistant, Emma, looked me in the eye and said, "Dr. Meadows, you are green. Go home before you infect everyone." It was 11:30 a.m. on a July Thursday. Sun blazing, humidity suffocating. I walked into my home, my sanctuary, expecting relief. Duke didn't come running to greet me, a signal I ignored. The house was quiet. Too quiet except for the music upstairs. Slow, sultry, not Gretchen's usual taste. Each step up the oak staircase felt like walking toward a life I couldn't reclaim. My hand brushed the bedroom doorknob, the same one I'd turned thousands of times over 15 years. And there he was, Boyd Hutchkins, in my bed, wearing my robe, drinking coffee from my world's best dad mug, looking at me like I'd just interrupted his morning routine. "You're home early," he said, like I was some unwelcome guest. Before Boyd, my life was a perfect American dream. I ran Meadows Veterinary Clinic on Main Street, right between Henderson's Hardware and the bakery famous for cinnamon rolls that drew people from 3 counties over. Every morning, I woke at 5:30, brewed coffee in a kitchen I had renovated myself, and watched the sunrise paint our backyard gold. Gretchen would come down around 6:15, hair messy from sleep, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. She'd steal sips of my coffee even though hers was brewing. A routine perfected over 16 years. Predictable. Comfortable. Mine. I met Gretchen at a county animal shelter charity event in 2008. I was providing free vaccinations. She was volunteering at the registration table. A massive German shepherd lunged at everyone. People scattered. She walked up, sat on the floor, and waited. 20 minutes later, the dog's head was in her lap. Calm. Tamed. "How did you do that?" I asked, awestruck. "Patience," she said, green eyes meeting mine. "Everything worthwhile requires patience." We were married 14 months later in her parents' backyard. Her father, Paul, a retired mail carrier, pulled me aside during the reception. "Gretchen needs stability. Promise me you'll give her that." I shook his hand. I promised. Paul died 2 years later from a heart attack. He never knew his daughter would become the type to bring another man into her husband's bed. Colby and Josie, our twins, were born during a February blizzard in 2013. I nearly crashed the car twice getting Gretchen to the hospital. Colby came first, quiet, observant. Josie followed 12 minutes later, screaming like she was furious she came second. Gretchen laughed through exhausted tears. "Frank, we're parents." That weight, it hit me like a truck. Everything from that moment forward, every decision, every action, would be for them. The clinic grew faster than I expected. What started as me and one technician became a staff of 8. I treated everything: hamsters, horses, cows, dogs, cats. Specialized in large animal medicine. Drove out to farms at all hours when a cow had trouble calving or a horse colicked. Money was good. Better than good. We bought the Colonial on Maple Street when the twins were 3. A fixer-upper everyone said was a nightmare. "This house has good bones," I told Gretchen. "Peeling wallpaper, creaking floors. We'll make it ours." And we did. Every weekend, every spare moment, I restored that house. My sweat, my hands, my love, and then everything unraveled. Because life has a way of reminding you that nothing is truly yours. Not your wife, not your children, not your home, not even the sense of safety you thought you had built with your own 2 hands. And then that envelope appeared, sitting on my windshield in the October rain, whispering of a past I couldn't escape and a future I didn't yet understand. He waited for you. I didn't know it then. But that small piece of paper was the first thread pulling me towards something bigger, something darker, something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and the limits of human betrayal. The train ticket. That was my choice, my step into the unknown, but where it would take me, and who was truly waiting at that station, was a story that would redefine my life forever. Because what comes next isn't just revenge. It's a reckoning, and some truths are worth risking everything for. The rain kept falling that night, and as I gripped the envelope, I felt a chill. Not from the cold, not from the damp, but from the certainty that once you pull the thread on a lie this big, there's no going back. I didn't yet know it, but the small-town world I thought I understood was about to crumble entirely. And somewhere, in that darkness between what I had lost and what I had yet to face, Boyd Hutchkins was waiting, and so was the rest of the story. It began with a train ticket, a note, and the realization that the life I had built was gone. The pieces of my family, my dignity, my home, shattered. But the question that burned in my chest, louder than my fear, louder than my grief, was this: could I reclaim it? Could I face the darkness waiting at the end of that ticket and survive? Because sometimes the only way to fight back is to step into the unknown, and I did. Step by step, train by train, truth by truth. But what I found at the station would change everything I thought I knew about betrayal, about survival, and about the price of trust. And in that moment, I realized, some people aren't just lost to you. Some people plan to destroy you entirely. The envelope wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge, and I had no choice but to accept it, because if I didn't, everything I loved would be gone forever, and I wouldn't let that happen. Not again. Not this time. That's when I saw him, Boyd Hutchkins, waiting, smiling, like he knew exactly how this would end, but I had a secret he didn't know. A plan he could never anticipate, and a storm of consequences he hadn't even imagined. Because sometimes the most dangerous people underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who've lost everything, the ones with nothing left to lose, the ones who are about to rewrite the rules of the game entirely. And Boyd was about to learn that the hard way. Because my story didn't end on Maple Street. It was only just beginning. The envelope, the train ticket, the words. They were just the start of a reckoning no one would forget. And somewhere in the shadows, someone else was watching, waiting, and ready to step into the story I was about to write with blood, fire, and truth. One wrong move, and everything would burn. But make no mistake, I was ready, because after losing everything, you discover a new kind of strength, a strength born of loss, a strength born of betrayal, a strength born of love, and the refusal to let it die. And the station, the train, the man who had taken it all. They had no idea what was coming next. Not yet, but they would. Oh, they would, and when they did, they would finally understand what it meant to face Frank Meadows, the man who had nothing left to lose, the man who was coming for them, and nothing would ever be the same again. I stripped the wood, laid the tile, rebuilt the wraparound porch board by board, each nail hammered with purpose, sweat dripping into the cracks of my hands. Gretchen, she painted the nurseries, planted gardens, turned that broken house into something you'd see in a magazine. Neighbors would slow their cars just to watch us work. "Did you see what Frank did with the front columns?" They'd whisper, "Look at the Meadows place. Incredible." And for a moment pride swelled in my chest. But pride has a price, and mine was measured in time I could never get back. Emergency calls didn't wait for dance recitals. Sick animals didn't pause for family dinners. Daddies saving puppies. Gretchen would tell the twins when I missed yet another bedtime story. At first, she said it with pride. Later, with resignation. Finally, with something colder. Something that sounded like contempt. And the changes in her, they were gradual, like watching someone lose weight. Day by day, subtle, almost imperceptible, until suddenly you realize the person you loved has been slipping away before your very eyes. She joined a gym, wore makeup to the grocery store, bought clothes that seemed meant for someone else's eyes, not mine. "I'm 44, Frank," she said when I commented on a particularly short dress. I won't be attractive forever. You're beautiful, I told her, meaning it with every fiber of my being. You haven't really looked at me in years, she replied. Maybe she was right. And then Boyd appeared, like he had been cast in some cruel parody of everything I wasn't. Where I had softened around the middle from too many rushed dinners, he had abs that strained through his t-shirt. Where I spoke softly, carefully, honed from years of calming frightened animals, he commanded rooms with volume alone. Where I fixed animals, he fixed houses, cars, motorcycles, machines I'd never learned because I was too busy memorizing veterinary medicine textbooks. Your husband works hard, Boyd told Gretchen one day, standing just out of earshot while I worked on our deck. Must be tough being married to a saint, Gretchen laughed. But it wasn't the warm, affectionate laugh I remembered. No, saints don't make good husbands. They're too busy saving the world to notice the world crumbling at home. I should have confronted her then. I should have asked what she meant. I should have fought for my marriage. But I had a surgery scheduled. A young girl's cat needed a tumor removed, and so I told myself, later. We'll talk later. There's always a later, until suddenly there isn't. That Thursday in July started like food poisoning, but ended with my entire life detonating into pieces I could never reclaim. I stood in my bedroom doorway, staring at Boyd Hutchkins in my bed. My robe clung to him like a mockery of comfort. He sipped from my world's best dad mug, oblivious to the chaos he had caused. The ceiling fan I'd installed last summer spun lazy circles above him. The sheets Gretchen and I had chosen for our anniversary wrapped around his legs. Everything in that room belonged to me, except the man occupying it. You need to leave, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady, considering the walls of my life had just collapsed. Get dressed. Get out. Now. Boyd sat the coffee mug on my nightstand, right next to the framed photo of our family at Disney World, and laughed. A gravelly, mocking sound that crawled under my skin. Your house, he said. Ha! Gretchen says you barely live here anymore. Spends more nights at the clinic than in this bed. Where is she? Where is she? I asked, though part of me already knew. She was letting this happen. This wasn't a clandestine affair I had stumbled upon. This was deliberate. Getting her nails done, Boyd said, stretching like a cat. Should be back soon. We're planning lunch at that new Italian place downtown. The one you've been promising to take her to for 6 months. The casualness, the lack of shame, the complete and utter disregard for me or my existence. That was what snapped something inside me. I stepped into my own bedroom, grabbed his clothes from the chair. Get dressed and leave, or I call the police. He stood, all 6'4" of him, my robe falling open, revealing the audacity of someone who believed they were entitled to my life. Frank, buddy, he said, you're not understanding. This isn't your room anymore. Hasn't been for months. You just didn't know it. The deed to this house is in my name, I said, clenching his jeans in my fists. I had rebuilt every inch of this place. Every weekend, every sacrifice, every drop of sweat, blood, and love poured into these walls. And now he claimed it as his own. Boyd stepped closer, a predator smelling fear. While your wife was alone, Boyd stepped closer. While your kids wondered why Daddy loved sick dogs more than them, you built a house, Frank. But Gretchen made it a home, and now she's made it mine. I threw his clothes at his chest. Get out before I do something we'll both regret. That's when I heard the garage door. Gretchen's Suburban pulling in, and Boyd? He smiled like he'd just won the lottery. Perfect timing. Let's ask the lady of the house what she wants. She walked up the stairs slowly, heels clicking with a rhythm like a countdown to judgment. She appeared in the doorway, sundress I'd never seen before, hair freshly styled, beautiful, and cold as January ice. Frank, she said, as if my presence surprised her not at all. You're home early. I gestured at Boyd, still standing in my robe. What is this? What are you doing? She passed me like I was furniture, sat on the bed, looked up with those green eyes that once made me feel like a hero. I'm living my life. Frank, something I should have done years ago. We have children. We have a marriage. 16 years, Gretchen. 16 years of being your afterthought, she said. 16 years of explaining to the kids why Daddy missed another recital. 16 years of sleeping alone while you saved every animal in the county, except the woman dying of loneliness in your own bed. So you bring him here? Into our home? Into our bed? My home, she corrected, calm, sharp. My bed. You just paid for it. And then we heard it. The front door slam. Colby and Josie were home from school, backpacks hitting the floor, Duke's nails scrabbling on hardwood as he raced to greet them. "Mom!" Josie called up. "Whose truck is in Dad's parking spot?" "Don't you dare!" I hissed at Gretchen. "Whatever this is, we handle it without them knowing." Boyd laughed. "They already know, Frank. Who do you think makes them breakfast when you leave before dawn? Who helps with homework while you're at the clinic until midnight? Footsteps on the stairs. My children, coming up to find their father facing off against their mother's boyfriend. Anger radiating from both of us, thickening the air, changing its temperature. Dad?" Colby's face shifted from surprise to understanding to fear in seconds. "Your father was just leaving," Gretchen said, her tone smooth. "No," I said, stepping forward. "This is my house. He leaves. Then Boyd hit me. No warning, no wind-up. Just a fist connecting with my ribs like a sledgehammer. I doubled over, gasping, and he grabbed my collar, dragging me toward the stairs. Josie screamed. Colby tried to grab Boyd's arm. Stop hurting him." He threw me down the staircase, the same stairs I'd carried my twins up for bedtime 1,000 times. I hit the landing hard, felt something crack in my shoulder. Blood tasted iron and humiliation. Through the pain, I saw my children crying. Gretchen telling them everything was fine, that Daddy had just fallen. Boyd stood at the top of the stairs, massive, triumphant. "You come back here again without permission. It'll be worse. This is my family now, Frank. You're just a paycheck." I looked at my children. Their faces held confusion, fear, a longing for the father they barely recognized. "Daddy's okay," I managed to whisper to Josie, pulling myself up. But nothing would ever be okay again. Divorce proceedings became a masterclass in calculated destruction. Gretchen's lawyer, Denise Cromwell, a shark from the city, painted me as an absentee father who prioritized animals over my family. Documentation of every missed recital, every canceled vacation, every emergency call became evidence against me. Dr. Meadows earned $340,000 last year, Cromwell told Judge Patricia Hawkins, a stern woman who seemed decided against me before I even spoke. Yet his children barely know him. His wife has been functionally a single mother while he built his veterinary empire. My lawyer, Tom Brennan, lifelong friend, tried to argue that I worked to provide the best life possible. House, college funds, stability. Judge Hawkins looked over her glasses. And in that courtroom, with every whispered judgment, every accusatory glance, I realized something terrifying. My life, built piece by piece, board by board, had been weaponized against me. Every choice I'd made to protect, provide, and endure had been twisted into a weapon of my own undoing, and as I sat there, beaten down, a father stripped of authority, a husband stripped of trust, I understood the truth. Sometimes the people you love most become the architects of your destruction. And the question that burned in my chest louder than my heartbreak was this: if the life I had built could be stolen so completely, what would it take it back? Because someone had already crossed the line, and someone had yet to pay the price. The story didn't end in that courtroom. It was just beginning, and somewhere in the shadows, Boyd Hutchkins was smiling, waiting, knowing that the game had only just begun. The storm I was about to unleash would change everything. Everything. And the first move was mine sometimes. Rock bottom isn't a moment. It's a season. A long, cruel stretch of days where everything you built, everything you loved, collapses piece by piece until you're left staring at the wreckage of a life you don't even recognize. That's where I was. Dr. Frank Meadows, once a respected veterinarian, a husband, a father, reduced to a ghost parked across from his own house. The house I rebuilt with my own hands, now belonging to another man. Money doesn't raise children, Dr. Meadows. Parents do. That's what the judge said before taking everything that made me a father and handing it to the woman who'd already replaced me. Boyd got the house. Gretchen got the kids. I got a court order, a bill I'd never escape, and a scar on my ribs that burned every time I breathed. The assault charges I filed went nowhere. Boyd claimed I'd attacked him first. Me, the man who'd spent his life saving sick animals, accused of starting a fight in his own home. The police report called it an accident. Consistent with a fall. There were no witnesses. At least none the court would listen to. My children saw everything. Colby, 12, Josie, 10, standing at the top of the stairs watching their father get thrown down like trash. But Gretchen's lawyer told the court, "We won't put them through that." She said it like she cared, like she hadn't let them watch the man she cheated with destroy me. When the dust settled, I wasn't just divorced. I was erased. The house, gone. The practice, liquidated. The dog, my dog, given to her because the children needed stability. Joint custody became supervised visits every other weekend. I wasn't even trusted to see my own kids without someone taking notes. $8.3 million. That was the price tag for my failure. The value of my life, my business, my years. Add $12,000 a month for child support. $8,000 for alimony and after taxes and fees. I had enough left for a used Honda Accord with a cracked windshield and a smell of defeat. No landlord wanted to rent to a man with domestic issues. So I lived in that car, parked right across from the house I'd built, watching through fogged glass as Boyd tucked my kids into bed, as Duke, my golden retriever, chased a ball across the same yard where I'd built their swing set. 3 months of this. 3 months of purgatory. 3 months of dying one day at a time. I showered at the gym, ate gas station food, worked emergency shifts in towns where no one knew me, where I was just Dr. Meadows, the temp vet. Every other Saturday, I got my 2 hours. Supervised visits in a room with beige walls and a social worker scribbling in a notepad. "Dad, why can't you come home?" Josie asked one day, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "It's complicated, sweetheart," I said. "Boyd says you chose work over us," Colby added, not even looking at me. "He says real fathers don't abandon their families. How do you tell your son that sometimes the villain wins? That sometimes the truth doesn't matter? That the man he calls Dad is the reason his real one sleeps in a car?" I couldn't, I just smiled. Told them I loved them. Watched them leave. October came early that year, cold and merciless. The nights froze my breath against the inside of the windshield. I'd curl up in the back seat wearing every layer I owned, watching the lights of my old house flicker through the trees. Some nights, I saw Colby's face at his bedroom window, just standing there, staring out into the dark. I'd raise my hand, but he never waved back. Then came October 15th, 3 a.m. I woke up to the soft hiss of fog outside and something tucked under my windshield wiper. An envelope, no return address, no markings, just my name, written in a hand I hadn't seen since I was 15. Inside was an old Amtrak ticket, Millbrook Station, Montana. Departure, October 16th, 8 p.m., and 1 note. 4 words. He waited for you. The handwriting. God, I knew it instantly. The slanted letters. The forward lean. My father. Walter Meadows. The man who vanished 32 years ago. When I was 15, he kissed my mom goodbye, said he'd be late for dinner, and never came back. They found his car at the bus station. Wallet still inside. Keys in the ignition. Only thing left behind was a note on our kitchen table. "I'm sorry. This is the only way to keep you safe. The police said he ran off. Maybe a nervous breakdown. Maybe another family. My mother never believed that. And when her heart finally stopped 5 years later, it wasn't from illness. It was from waiting. And now, 32 years later, someone wanted me to believe he'd been waiting for me. It sounded insane, like a cruel joke. But what did I have left to lose? So I turned the key, started the Honda, and drove east toward a ghost. The train ride took 18 hours. 18 hours through the skeleton of America. Abandoned towns, silent fields, places where hope used to live. My ticket was for a private compartment. No reason, no explanation. The conductor, an older man named Jerome, punched my ticket and hesitated. "Millbrook Station," he murmured. "Haven't had a stop there in 20 years. He gave me a long look. "Someone pulled strings for this, son. Be careful. Sometimes the past comes back, and it doesn't come back alone." By the time the train slowed, the world outside was nothing but dark forest and silence. Millbrook Station appeared like something forgotten by time. One cracked platform, one flickering light, one building leaning under its own weight. No town. No roads, just wilderness. The train didn't even stop. It just slowed. Enough for me to jump off before it roared away into the black. The air was sharp. Smelled like pine and old ghosts. The station door was unlocked. I pushed it open and the hinges screamed like something alive. Inside. It smelled like wood, medicine, and aftershave. His aftershave, and there he was, sitting by the window. Oxygen tank beside him. My father. He was smaller now, frail, his face lined and thin. But I'd have known that posture anywhere. He turned when he heard the door. "Hello, Frankie," he said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 32 years of anger, grief, and questions boiled up, crashing together inside me. He'd let Mom die thinking he'd abandoned us. He'd missed my graduation, my wedding, my kids' births, all of it. And now, here he was, apologizing for being late. "You're angry," he said. "You have every right to be. But before you say anything, I need you to know why I left. And why I'm breaking every rule to see you now." He rolled his wheelchair to an old filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder covered in faded government seals. "In 1993, he began, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. 3 police officers from our town, men, I'd known for years, executing someone behind the paper mill. I froze. It turned out half the department was owned by a crime syndicate running drugs through Indiana," he continued. "I went to the FBI. They offered me 2 choices, testify and disappear, or stay silent and let them come for my family." He looked at me then, eyes clouded with guilt and time. There was no option where I got to stay. "You could have taken us with you," I snapped. He shook his head. "No, Frankie. You were 15. Your mother was caring for her father. Uprooting you both, changing names, living under new identities. That's not a life. I thought letting you hate me was better than watching you live in fear." He opened another box, and inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Me at my high school graduation. My wedding day. The twins' first birthday. Every milestone I'd lived, photographed from a distance. "Every moment that mattered," he said, voice trembling. "I was there. Hidden, but there. I've been Thomas Carpenter for 30 years. Worked as a ranch foreman. But I never stopped being your father." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to hate him, but all I could do was ache. "Mom died thinking you abandoned us," I whispered. He nodded. "I know." And for the first time, I saw him cry. The man who'd once seemed unbreakable, broken now by his own choices. Outside, the wind howled against the station walls, as if the world itself was eavesdropping. He looked out the window, his voice lowering to a rasp. "They found me again, Frankie. After all these years, the people I testified against, their sons run things now. They never stopped looking. He turned back toward me, eyes glinting with something between fear and resolve. You weren't supposed to get that ticket yet, but someone on the inside knew time was running out. He pointed to the corner of the room where an old trunk sat half buried under dust. In there, everything you'll need to finish what I started. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering. Inside that trunk were binders, maps, stacks of old photos, and one more thing, a black revolver, oiled, loaded. Walter, my father, met my eyes. They took everything from me once, he said. Don't let them take you too. The light flickered. The wind outside howled louder, somewhere in the distance. A car engine. Headlights cut through the trees. My father's breathing quickened. They found us. He gripped my wrist, his old hand trembling. Whatever happens next, you run. Do you understand me? You run. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just a reunion, it was an inheritance. Not of money. Not of property, but of secrets. And whatever was coming through those trees. It wasn't done with the Meadows family yet. The cold Montana wind cut through the broken windows of the old station house, but inside the air was thick with urgency, with the weight of decades-long secrets finally spilling into the light. I remember the moment Walter Meadows, my father, wheeled toward me, his frame frail, his lungs rattling inside his chest like the last echoes of an old train whistle. He gestured weakly to the oxygen tank beside him. Lung cancer. 3 weeks, maybe 4. But this wasn't just about illness. This was the reason he risked everything to bring me here. I sank into a moth-eaten chair, feeling the chill of the old wooden floor through my jeans, as he wheeled over to a desk and opened a laptop that looked absurdly modern amidst the decay. And then he showed me everything. Financial records, emails, text messages, everything Gretchen and Boyd had done to destroy my life. Everything they'd planned for me, meticulously laid out over 2 years. He told me about Gretchen, my wife, about how she'd started planning my destruction the day she met Boyd. And Boyd. Boyd wasn't just some man my wife had stumbled into. He was Vincent Torelli, a professional con artist wanted in 3 states for fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, a man who preyed on lonely wives of successful men, destroying husbands before disappearing into the shadows. My legs gave out beneath me. The chair groaned as I sank down, struggling to process it all. How could he possibly know all of this? I asked, my voice tight with disbelief. Because, my father said, wheezing slightly, I still have friends in certain agencies. Friends who owe me for testimonies that put dangerous people away. I've been building a case for you, Frank. As of 6 hours ago, federal marshals have warrants for both of them. Fraud, conspiracy, assault. Your children are being placed in emergency custody until you can claim them. He pulled out another document. My eyes widened as I read the details. Thomas Carpenter, the name he'd lived under for 3 decades, had been amassing careful investments, patents, and compound interest. A trust in my name, worth $10 million. $10 million. I started to speak, to protest, to beg for explanations. But he held up his hand. I don't want forgiveness, Frank. I want you to know that every choice I made, right or wrong, was to protect you. I want you to rebuild your life, raise your children, and know that sometimes love looks like leaving. 2 weeks. That's how long I stayed with him in that crumbling station house he'd converted into a makeshift sanctuary. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, we talked. 32 years of silence poured into hours of conversation. He told me about the nightmares that followed his testimony, about Christmas mornings spent alone staring at photos of the family he'd protected by disappearing. And I told him about Mom, about her final days, about how she'd whispered his name at the end, still believing he would walk through the door. I wrote her letters every week for 5 years, he said one evening, Montana's sun slipping behind the mountains. Never sent them, but I wrote them. They're in that box by the door. Maybe someday you can burn them for me. Let the smoke find her. And then, as if his life had been spent orchestrating justice from afar, Walter's predictions came true with precision. Federal marshals arrested Boyd and Gretchen at the house I once called mine. Boyd, attempting to escape through the very back door I'd installed 3 summers ago, tumbled into the koi pond I had labored over for weekends. Poetic justice was written in every splash, every startled gasp of the fish. Gretchen, blissfully unaware, had already transferred $400,000 offshore, yet even that couldn't save her from the consequences of her actions. Walter died 2 weeks after my arrival. Tuesday morning, October 30th. We were sitting on the platform, coffee from a thermos warming our hands, the endless pine forest bathed in early light. He recounted the time he'd watched from a parking garage as I performed emergency surgery on a dog hit by a car, saving it on the sidewalk with nothing but my kit. "That's when I knew you'd become the man I hoped you'd be," he said softly, gripping my hand once and then exhaling for the final time. Peaceful, finally. His burial in Billings, Montana, was quiet. His headstone read, Walter Meadows, Father, Protector, because he had never truly left. The legal aftermath was swift. Boyd's criminal history exposed him as a career predator, Gretchen as his unwitting accomplice. The divorce verdict was overturned. My house returned, though I sold it immediately. Too many ghosts, too many memories. Full custody of Colby and Josie was granted to me. And Duke, my golden retriever, returned home with us, tail wagging despite weeks of neglect. "Dad." Josie ran into my arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We knew you'd come back. We knew the truth would come out. How?" I asked, holding them as if the world itself might vanish if I let go. "Because you're dead," Colby said simply. "You fix things, even when they seem impossible to fix." With Walter's money and the settlement from the overturned divorce, I started over in Montana, not far from where my father had spent his hidden years. I opened a new veterinary practice in a town that truly needed one. A small place where every client's name is known, where I never miss a school recital, never cancel a parent-teacher meeting, never let emergencies steal the presents I owe my children. Clinic doors close at 5. Emergencies are referred elsewhere. The lessons of my past burned into me. Being a good veterinarian does not require sacrificing being a good father. Gretchen is serving 3 years for fraud and conspiracy. Boyd, 20 years in federal prison with 14 previous victims testifying at his sentencing. Justice. Delayed, but not denied. The old Millbrook station has been restored as a memorial library. I used part of Walter's trust to rebuild it, to transform our brief, tragic reunion into something permanent. There's a plaque by the door. Sometimes love requires distance. Sometimes protection looks like abandonment. Every Sunday, I take Colby and Josie to visit Walter's grave. We tell him about school, friends, and Duke's latest antics. Josie leaves drawings. A grandfather she knew for only 2 weeks but loves as though he'd been part of her life forever. Colby plays his guitar, songs he's learning in music class, the one activity I never miss. That envelope, yellowed and framed, sits on my office wall next to a photo of Walter and me from those final weeks. Patients ask about it sometimes. I tell them it's a reminder that salvation can come from the most unexpected places, that the people we think abandoned us might be holding us up from shadows we never knew existed. My father waited 32 years to save me. He gave up everything, his name, his family, his life, to protect us from dangers we couldn't even imagine. Was it the right choice? I can't say for certain, but I know this. When I needed him most, when my life had crumbled to dust, he appeared with perfect timing. Watching, waiting, guiding, some nights, when the Montana wind rattles the windows and Duke snores at my feet, I think about the train ticket that brought me there. How did he know I'd be sleeping in my car that night? How did he know I'd follow a cryptic note to a forgotten station? And then I remember, he'd been watching for 32 years. He knew, because fathers know, even across impossible distances, even through decades of silence, they know when their children need them most. The last words he spoke before leaving this world. Love doesn't end, Frankie. It just changes shape. And he was right. Love shaped itself into absence to keep us safe, into money to secure our future, into 2 final weeks to explain a lifetime of distance. And now it shapes itself through me, through the way I hold Colby and Josie, the presents I give that I once could not, and the promise that I will never choose anything over them again. A man who lost everything, to deceit, to corruption, to betrayal, found redemption in an abandoned train station with a father he thought was dead. It sounds like fiction, too neat, too convenient. But sometimes life writes stories far more powerful than anything we could imagine. Stories where the third act reveals the first act was never what it seemed, where abandonment was protection, where loss became a doorway to what we truly needed. The Montana wind whines outside my window, and Duke shifts at my feet. I look at that framed envelope, at Walter's face in the photo, and I wonder, what other unseen hands are shaping the lives we live? What other sacrifices have been made in the shadows? Because sometimes, the people we think have forgotten us are watching, waiting, protecting, and sometimes, salvation comes in the form of a father who waited 32 years, knowing exactly the moment his son would need him most. The next chapter isn't written yet. But one thing is certain, the shadows are not empty. They are alive, and they are patient.